Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second live stream with Less Music, More Music. Tonight we have Kevin Hewick, a legend in Leicester music, who's going to be playing some
It's
tunes.
called a near legend by the Leicester Mercury.
A near legend.
A near legend.
We'll come
What
to that.
does that mean? That must mean some sort of failure rate there. A near legend.
So
by the near legendary Leicester Mercury.
Welcome to everybody who's looking at this stream. If you want to give us some feedback on the Facebook page, that would be great.
Feedback is always a good thing.
Indeed. Now, as I say, we're with Kevin Hewick, and as Mary Poppins once said, let's start at the very beginning. Kevin, can I ask you first of all, are you Leicester born and bred?
Absolutely.
Where were you born in, or whereabouts did you live in Leicester in your early years?
City General Hospital. On a very snowy Monday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning, February 4th, 1957, which dates me rather.
And what are your early memories of Leicester?
The first thing I ever remember was we were pretty poor, my parents, and we lived in one room of my grandma's house on Green Lane Road. 109 Green Lane Road. I believe it's now an optician's. And I remember I must have been 2 years, 3 months old, May 1959. I remember my Uncle Bill and my dad carrying things out of the room where we lived, and what it was, we were moving. We were leaving there to go to Ayers Monsell to live in our lovely new swanky modern ultra-modern council house. So that's my first ever memory.
Okay.
Is stood in the hallway. You know, you'd be in the way as a 2-year-old, wouldn't you? And they're taking chairs and things out.
It's strange how certain things stick in your memory, isn't it?
That's the one. That's the one.
Excellent. How did you first get into music? I was reading on Wikipedia, doing a little bit of research, that you got a guitar at 6 but didn't start playing until your teens. Is that correct?
I saw the Beatles on television. I was particularly taken with John Lennon.
Yeah.
Just thought he was fantastic. And I thought that with the guitar, you just held it like this. And that was it.
Yeah.
So when I got this guitar at 6 years old, I was very disappointed because, of course, it was nothing like. That got given away to my cousin. I lost interest in it. But then I became a really huge Beatles fan. And from that, also, I heard a lot of stuff from my mum's youngest brother. My uncle was only 6 years older than me. And I'd go around my granddad's house, and my Uncle Joe was just crazy on buying records. So I heard loads of things at like 8, 9, 10 years old that, when I think about it as a musical education, it was quite extraordinary. I remember him having Prince Buster, One Step Beyond, and all that. So when Madness did it all them years later, I'm going, oh, this is 15 years ago I heard this, you know. And he also got into albums like, you know, Dylan, Blonde on Blonde, Hendrix, Electric Ladyland. I heard Sgt. Pepper the day it came out. I actually especially went round because I knew he was going to get a copy of Sgt. Pepper. So 10 years old, I heard Sgt. Pepper for the first time the day it came out in 1967. So some of it I didn't understand, but it all soaked in. And then I wanted a guitar again, and I was crazy on the Beatles, late period Beatles. The Beatles of like Sgt. Pepper, White Album, Abbey Road, Let It Be. And I still didn't quite click with the guitar for a long time, but I went to Countessop Community College when it was extremely experimental and revolutionary. Fantastic. We thought the world was going to change. We thought all schools were going to be like this. And of course, that's what didn't happen in the end. But we were lucky. Yeah. We got that portal in time where amazing things happened. It was such a great school that you got there an hour early and left there 3 or 4 hours late.
So you weren't rushing to get out of school,
you were hanging out in the music block and stuff, and we had Malcolm Nichols there, the music teacher, let us do our own thing. So we were making all kinds of freaky noises with feedback guitars, and it was great.
So you were really self-taught, but with a bit of help from Countessthorpe College?
Yeah, I had a couple of guitar lessons. One was with a young lad called Rob. My dad was a milkman and he worked with Rob on the milk round. I thought Rob was the coolest guy alive. He had a leather jacket and a double cutaway hollow body electric guitar. And Rob taught me my first chord, D. So thank you, Rob. Bless him. He passed away when he was 19, sadly.
Oh.
He took ill and died. And I always think of Rob when that D chord, he taught me my first chord.
Yeah.
So bless him. That's perhaps his little bit of something in this world now.
And from learning to play the guitar, then through the college, how did you graduate to playing, say, your first gig?
I didn't really. I found leaving Countessthorpe very difficult. I didn't do very well with exams. And I'm one of these people David Cameron's warning you about. I kind of was just on the dole, living with my parents and on the dole with absolutely no ambition whatsoever, no idea what I was doing. So there you are, the Tories have warned you about people like me. And I was ahead of my time, you know.
So you'll be voting Tory?
I ended up getting actually press gang to work at the DHSS. They said, oh, you are well enough qualified to work for us.
Ooh.
I remember my first ever wage packet, first album I bought with my first ever wage packet was David Bowie, Low. That's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And in terms then of musical influences, I mean, you've already mentioned quite a few people. Do you feel that you have any heavy influences, or are you just being constantly influenced by what you hear?
Well, I took in a lot from things, obviously like the Beatles. Lennon became very special to me. Dylan. Roy Harper, massive influence.
Yeah.
Roy Harper, I found absolutely life-changing. Discovering Roy Harper when I was like about, really got into him when I was like about 16, 17. And
What was it about Roy Harper that inspired you?
that he was writing incredible songs that were like 10, 15, 20 minutes long. Things like The Same Old Rock and The Lord's Prayer, and they were unbelievably great songs. And it was like that epic side of Dylan as well, with things like Visions of Joanna, Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands, Desolation Row.
So you place a lot of emphasis on lyrics in a song?
Yeah, very important.
Yeah.
Very important.
What is your writing process?
I think about it all the time. It's just with me all the time.
So you could be what, on the bus going into town and something,
Anything,
you would
yeah.
see something, and what would you do? Would you immediately write something down so
I
that
write things down. I sing into the iPhone. Product placement there. I just, things revolve around in my head, and I got endless notebooks. I must have more than 300 A4 notebooks just full of thousands of lyric ideas. Obviously, most of them don't make it.
yeah,
They're just there, you know, and music-wise, I just drift around with chords and sing and see if something magical happens.
So at what age did you write your first song?
My first ever song it was 1968, and it was called Arizona Highways. And the only bit I can remember of it was, we're on the Arizona highways. The Arizona highways. Do you get the idea with the title?
Yeah.
The Arizona highways. Tonight on the Arizona highways. That's the first song I remember ever writing. Yeah. Arizona highways. There was a magazine at school called Arizona Highways. Sounded good. I was 11. I couldn't help it.
You do seem to have a bit of an interest in America. Is that true, or is that just something that comes up in the odd song?
Just a lot of great music, and like another big thing with me is Hendrix. Massive fan of Hendrix. Obviously, we mentioned Dylan and Neil Young,
yeah.
David Crosby.
Oh yeah.
David Crosby's very, very much a man after my own heart. He's a fantastic character, and
So in terms of American culture, it's very specifically the music rather than the whole...
the music, yeah, the music, and throwing a bit of James Dean and Marilyn Monroe.
Can't go wrong. So you wrote your first song around about 11. When did you first play music to...
County Thorpe College, we did a band called Life.
Yeah.
There was my friends Jamie Mills, Gwyn Woodward, Kevin Swanwick, and we were called Life. There's been a few bands called Life since, but we were the originals. We were Life.
Did you copyright it?
We were Life both before and after death. So. No, we weren't very popular. There was another band called Demon Tweak.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good name, Demon Tweak. With my friends, John Rayner and A.D. Barrett and that was the band. That was the cool band in school.
So that was playing mainly in school rather than, say, an outside venue?
Yeah, totally, yeah.
What was your first experience of playing an outside venue?
Unbelievably, it was Manchester, and I was bottom of the bill to Section 25, a certain ratio, and Joy Division, and that was my first ever proper gig, really, outside of school. I do remember we did some shows... we did this kind of cowboy show and this other show that was like a kind of country fair, and we played some places like Cossington Recreation Ground.
Right.
And what was that crazy pub in Ironfields? Don't know, crazy place. And we remember we played in there, but that was like a school show.
Yeah.
In a pub in Ironfields, worked that one out. But really, that was that one. It was that one literally at the deep end, supporting Joy Division and certain ratio and Section 25.
Yeah.
That's when I got with Factory Records.
Okay, I mean, that could take us down a whole avenue of interesting talk.
Interesting and depressing stuff, yeah.
Just before we go down there, could you maybe start us off with a couple of songs?
I could. We'll start off with Mill Lane.
Okay.
People like me seek solitary ways, unspoken thoughts, walking a long Mill Lane, walking through shadows I knew I'd see again. Beneath the trees, touching stones, tasting rain. Far from you, far from you. A clearer way of seeing you, as clear as I could ever get. Imagine you far from you, far from you is a clearer way I could ever get to imagine you. Okay, that was Mill Lane. I'll try something now called Fact 501, which is about those factory days. Tony Wilson and all that. Mr. Manchester met me at Piccadilly. It was my first time in his sacred city. His northern folk was warm as his northern streets were grim. The unlikely setting for his post-punk conceptual thing. His happy and blue Mondays were still to come, and it was still a long way from Fact 501. Mr. Manchester drove me to Granada land. Was he a TV presenter just dabbling with bands? He filled my stupid head full of his big ideas, and I followed him to destinations unclear. His happy and blue Mondays were still to come, and it was still a long way from Fact 501. All was numbered, though the plan was there was no plan. All was numbered, even the life of the man. In his Armani uniform of 80s excess, each shirt worth a dozen from BHS. He told me about the club that he couldn't afford to run. It has to be built, he said, and when it's built they will come. His happy and blue Mondays turned to drugs and guns, and it was still a long way from Fact 501. Was numbered, though the plan was there was no plan. All was numbered, even the life of the man. Room on the 12 mix for the voice of regrets. I'd had my time as the factory pet. He'd got new kids to play with. His city had stopped being fun. So I left him on a Broadway heading for Fact 501. His bluest ever Monday, it had to come when he laid it all to rest. Fact 501. was numbered, even the life of the man. Woo! Whoa! I went totally wrong on that third verse. Sorry about that, folks.
We don't spot it. We're not the experts.
I am an expert. It went rather wrong there. There you are, I'm human and I make mistakes.
Well, thanks for that. So we've got to get back. I mean, you've sung FAC 501. How on earth did you manage to get basically your first gig as one with Joy Division?
It's all a bit mundane, really. I just sent a cassette and they liked it. Don't ever ask me how they picked that cassette out, because they had, in Alan Erasmus's Palatine Road flat, they had bin bags full of cassettes. Thousands of them. They had about 4 bin bags full of cassettes. So don't ask me, just pure fluke. And though I was interesting.
So you'd played school concerts and the odd thing around Leicester, and then all of a sudden you're supporting Joy Division.
And then I was on this tour with Roy Harper, supporting Roy Harper, my absolute singer-songwriter hero. There I was on tour with Harper himself.
So
that was a bigger deal to me than Joy Division. I'm sorry, everybody in their great coats huddled around Leicester Market or something, but you know, doing that with Roy Harper was a bigger deal to me.
Where was the Joy Division gig? Was it in Manchester?
It was in a weird place called the Osborne Club, which was a roller skating disco rink. There's a trend that people don't remember these days. So, yeah.
And was Curtis still alive then?
I think so, yeah. He seemed to be. He never spoke to me.
I was going to ask you that. Did you get to talk to them?
No, I was too shy.
Yeah.
I was sat with these 2 girls and he talked to the 2 girls. Shows how ill and disturbed he was that these 2 pretty girls were sat with me and he spoke to them but ignored me. Go figure.
No.
Must have been something wrong with him.
I'm struggling with that
Poor
one.
Ian, it was very, very sad. He watched me play once. He did really watch me play. He sat at the Scala Cinema in London, and on my 3rd song he walked out. I was kind of gutted because I thought, oh, at last he's really noticed me and he's listening to me play, and I'll get to meet him after and we'll become mates. And I never saw him again. It's still very sad.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how many years it is. It's a very sad, very tragic thing.
Yeah.
I may jest a little there.
So you'd sent a demo tape to Factory Records. They picked up on it. Who else did you get to meet in Factory? Did you get to meet?
I got to know the rest of Joy Division after, as they became New Order.
Yeah.
And very important to me were Certain Ratio, Durruti Column, Vin Riley, and Section 25, who became really good friends. And in more recent years, I've done a lot of shows with Section 25. And Crispy Ambulance, I've done shows with them in more recent times. Yeah. And, you know, they're all amazing people, wonderful people, very talented people. I mean, and we've had great times in recent years, and with Peter Hook doing The Light.
Yeah.
And doing shows with him where he's played the Joy Division and New Order songs. And
is that a follow-up from you having supported Joy Division and that early contact?
Well, yeah, obviously they know of me from those days. And in recent years, we've done quite a few shows with, you know, factory-related things, like with Section 25, Crispy Ambulance, Peter Hook and The Light. And I've met people again, like the members of Certain Ratio. It's been really good to see all of those guys again as well.
And how mad was Factory? Because there is the 24 Hour People film. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've seen it, yeah.
Where it looks just absolutely crazy. Was it that uncontrolled, or?
Well, like all these things, it's sort of a bit exaggerated, and I can only tell you what I saw. And I was at a time where it was really based in Alan Erasmus's flat and Tony Wilson's house.
Yep.
So it was, well, cottage at the time, Tony Wilson's cottage. So, you know, it was, there wasn't a thing like where we all sat together around a crazy £30,000 table suspended from the ceiling. That all came after my time.
Yeah.
So, And things like the Hacienda is after my time.
Yeah.
Though I was promised lifetime membership, which I never got to the Hacienda. I never went to the Hacienda, so...
No, I missed out on that.
I was supposed to do a gig at the Hacienda, and I finally freaked out, and it was the day before my birthday, and I thought, I'm not going to that horrible club the day before my birthday, so I didn't do it.
And
there's quite a famous photograph of a couple kissing in the entrance to the Hacienda, and the poster behind you can see Section 25, The Wake, Kevin Hewick. The show I never did, and funny enough, that was Section 25. The Wake had Bobby Gillespie on drums, who of course went on to Primal Scream, so who knows, I could have got mated with Bobby and maybe joined Primal Scream, but it didn't happen, so...
And what was your relationship? Were you signed by Factory, or...?
Nobody ever signed anything, though. No.
So it was all informal?
It's so the antithesis of this beige music business you've got now. This ridiculous, self-important, boring, tedious mainstream music business that, as usual, real artists have to try and destroy. So there, sometimes I say it's like punk rock never happened, and it really is like punk rock never happened sometimes.
Yeah.
And, but there are lots of people trying to do alternative things, and I hope I'm one of them.
And did you feel slightly let down by the way you were treated by Factory?
It ended a bit sadly, yeah. I got offered by Cherry Red, and they offered a much more conventional kind of, you'll get an album out and you'll get an advance. So I hopped over to Cherry Red, which a move which I soon lived to regret, because within a year Cherry Red dropped me. Of course, just as you can be signed, and that really was signed, you can be dropped. I still owe Cherry Red about £700, by the way. Can you believe it? That's the music business. I still owe Cherry Red £700. Cherry Red is your £700. There you
Are
go.
Cherry Red still trading?
Yes.
Are they?
Yes.
That's quite a success story.
Yes, as snake oil merchants, yes.
You've got an album called Always Numbered, and there are quite a few Factory references in there. Is that...
It refers to people like Tony Wilson.
Yeah.
There's a couple of songs about the late and very great and very amazing Larry Cassidy from Section 25. And there's references to people like Ian Curtis, Rob Gretton, who managed Joy Division and New Order, who was a terrific character, and Martin Hannett, the legendary producer, who was also an amazing guy and very kind to me. Martin, it's, amazing to think I got to meet him and talk to him and get to experience some of his wonderful madness. I was very lucky, because these people are like mythical now, and they're also stardust. So.
And was Always Numbered a sort of way of getting the Factory experience out of your system?
In a way, yeah. I mean, it's a funny thing, because a lot of people of my generation are standing there playing songs they did 20, 30 years ago and kind of reliving glory days. I'm not. I play a lot of stuff that's quite new, recently written. That's why I just went wrong on the last song. In fact, I was writing a song today and I was almost going to play it. In fact, I was writing the lyrics before we just came on air. And then I thought, this is madness, because I'd have to have the book in front of me and everything. It's a good new song, but I can't unveil it yet. But maybe another time. But, that's how I am. I push ahead. To me, it's a body of work, and nothing matters more than now and the future. Just as the past has its relevance and has its influences and the stories to be told. But now is very important. We're on planet now rather than planet then.
It's an interesting point, because looking around the music scene, there does seem to be quite a plethora of bands who are trading on old glories. People coming up from say one individual, and you'll see it on the billing, they used to be in such and such a band, and
it's
now
like Gang of Four. There's one member left. Andy Gill, the only person left.
Yeah.
But can you blame them? Peter Hook doing his Light thing. They do it very well. It's a great show. It's from his heart, not just from his wallet. I know what he puts into it. I've seen it firsthand. I've been there when they've done not so much a sound check as an open rehearsal for those lucky enough to be present, and they've worked their socks off to get that music right, and it's his heritage and he has every right.
Yeah.
And the same with anybody. Jesus and the Mary Chain are touring again, and with most of the original members, and Phil King on the bass, who was in Lush, so great, and why not? And they're playing Psycho Candy, why not? Why not?
Bring that music to a new generation.
Yeah, exactly. There's also people who didn't see it the first time or experience it, and they can now.
Yeah.
And I also am wary of stuff. I mean, I'm 58 now, but I've got a massive backlog of material that hasn't been released. I've got new material all the time. There's a new album nearly finished now, and it's the third album I've done in 3 years. It's literally been an album a year, and it'd be more if I could afford it and had the studio time and the resources. It wouldn't have been the third album in a year. It would have been in 3 years. Sorry, the third album. It would have been about the fifth album in 3 years.
Yeah.
I've got enough material to fill 3 or 4 more albums already, and I keep. When did I write my last song? I was working on it just before we switched this on.
Yeah.
So that's how I am. To me, it's a creative process,
And it's ongoing.
It's art. It's art. It is art for art's sake. It's about the art. It's not all about the bass. It's all about the art. It's about the fact that you're alive and life is vivid and extraordinary. It's beautiful. It's tragic, and you got to get that stuff out there and reflect it. And I take a lot of risks, and I think I'm also, to be honest, taken kind of for granted locally in Leicester. I don't think people quite grasp or appreciate what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to do. And what am I? If I was sort of like Leicester's Lou Reed, I'd be happy. That's what I am, really, in a way.
So you feel, in a sense, you're like the prophet that isn't appreciated in their own land?
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. I don't want to seem like I'm whinging about it or anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's frustrating, but then again, if it was all easy and I was Mr. Popular, it would be kind of a drag. Yeah. And I'm not doing stuff that's accessible, and and that doesn't mean there isn't a place for it. Look at Jersey Bud. He's a handsome devil. His songs are really accessible and instant. He's a lovely guy. He deserves all the success he gets. It wasn't my lot to be Jersey Bud. It was my lot to be Kevin Hewick.
Yeah.
Oh, goddamn, I wish I was Jersey Bud.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. He's great. He's great, and he's doing great, But there you go. Some of us, if we look into our hearts, we have to do something else. And that something else can be a little bit difficult and inaccessible. It's like, am I by the swimming pool in California, or am I traipsing across a frozen field in Siberia? I think we know the answer. But there you are. Siberia can be very beautiful this time of the year.
Would you suit sunny California, though?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course I would. I'd be hanging out with David Crosby, wouldn't I?
Do you not feel, in a way, though, that maybe it's the angst of what you're going through that inspires your music and drives you?
Well, when you get to my age, kids, unfortunately, you've had your triumphs and disappointments. You've had wonderful moments and absolute gut-wrenching tragedies. And I'm afraid that's kind of where I come from, really, that, Lou Reed put it very well with his album Magic and Loss. That title itself says it all. There's life in 3 words: magic and loss.
No.
And you're bound to sort of like have a few war wounds and things. But if you didn't have a love of life and an absolute wish to embrace it and a wish to communicate that joy, I wouldn't be here either, would I? It's not a story of misery and despair. It's actually a positive thing.
Lovely. Well, on that note, can we trouble you for a couple more songs?
that's the bit I dread, because after going so wrong on that one. Okay.
Well, if it's any consolation, we didn't hear it.
You didn't have this trouble with Elizabeth Cornish last week. She could play her songs, and
Well, she tried a new song at the end, and she had to have her book.
yes, I saw her do that. Yeah, she was. Well,
So you'll be in good
I'm
company.
not feeling that brave tonight after all my efforts today. Yeah. So we'll do. We'll scuttle to the relative safety of what is known as a greatest hit from the last album, The Heat of Molten Diamonds, which came out just over a year ago. This is a song called A Young Man's Dream of Revolution. He sleeps beneath the flag of the homeland that he never had, and he dreams a young man's dream of revolution. He was brave at the barricades, he was the firebrand who seized the day for a young man's dream of revolution. In the taverns the opinions flowed as freely as the ale and wine. Young men's dreams of revolution. His was the loudest voice of all, so unafraid to speak his mind about a young man's dream of revolution. 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 Did you see the vision through his eyes? Did you see the radiance in his mind? It was a young man's dream of revolution. He stood before the crowd and cried, the choice is fight or die for a young man's dream of revolution. Revolution, revolution, revolution. Revolution. Number 9, 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 number 9. Now he sleeps beneath the flag of the homeland that he never had, and he dreams a young man's dream, a young man's dream, a young man's dream of revolution. He was brave at the barricades, he was the firebrand who led the way to a young man's dream of revolution. 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 Revolution.
Thank you very much.
That Revolution bit, it's the Loud Revolution intro to Manic Street Preacher's Motown Junk. So that shouts it out, so I whisper it.
All right.
But it's an act of solidarity with the Manic Street Preachers. There you go. So, I'll do your Everyday Saviour, which is on the next album.
The album that's coming next.
Touching Stones, Tasting Rain, which should be out, we hope, about April.
Okay.
Flowers piled on flowers, sweet severed blooms, scattered petal randomness, crushed by thoughtless shoes. I think we need an everyday saviour, a man like us but stronger than me or you. Caught in traffic anger, the raging of the road, human races race toward uncertainties unknown. I think we need everyday saviour, a man like us but stronger than me or you. I think we need someone to say, if the way this is going is the right way. We're climbing mountains without pegs or ropes. Faith tells us we're getting there, guided by blind hope. I think we need that hand from the sky to lift us up, up, up to the lights.
Lovely, thank you very much.